pleasure to be at the Danish Institute of International Studies. I think this is the third time I have the privilege to do a conference here, and it's always a pleasure to discuss with my Danish colleagues about EU politics. It's good to see also in this room some of my former students from Paris, Danish students. So you see we're living in a globalized world where everywhere you go you always find former students of you. The only regret I have today, I must confess, is that I will not have time enough to follow the tracks of my new heroes. The first one is Detective Inspector Sarah Looms in The Killing, and my second hero is Birgit Nyborg in Borgen. In fact, my third hero is Ulla Borg. But just to say that this Danish series have made Denmark famous in many French families. We're waiting Thursday night to see Copenhague in the town hall, because this is the first image we have. But this is not the topic. The topic is France and the EU. What has changed with François Hollande? Maybe nothing has changed, but I try to answer as much as I can to this question. And let me start first by saying a word about François Hollande himself. As you know, François Hollande was elected in May 2012 after primary elections inside the Socialist Party. So there were several candidates, and at the end he was designated. But this man should not have been the candidate of the Socialist Party. We should never forget that the challenger to Nicolas Sarkozy should have been Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the Director General of the International Monetary Fund, who was prepared to compete against Nicolas Sarkozy and who had probably good chance to win. But as you know, he had private problems in New York. He was prosecuted by the New York Police Department for sexual abuse. So that was the end of his political career. But he should have been the candidate from the Socialist Party. If you look at the background of François Hollande, well, it's a typical background for politicians of the Fifth Republic. He graduated from CERI-SciencesPo, my own school, then he went to the École Nationale d'Administration, and he entered the higher civil service. He is a member of the Court of Audit. Most of his political career has been done inside the Socialist Party. If I may speak so, he is the party apparatchik. He is somebody who has done his career inside the party, but a party with huge differences. This party, which has been recreated in 1971 by François Mitterrand, has differences going along a left-right scale, so going from the tradition of the working class socialism to the tradition of what I will call the social liberal ideology. And being a party leader, he was a Secretary General for 11 years, between 1997 and 2008. He got a certain style. He is a man who never decides too quickly takes his time. And it is a man who is looking to the different position, the different balances between the position. This is what he learned inside the Socialist Party, and decide at the very end with a compromise. So to a certain extent, he is totally the opposite of his predecessor. I mean, in terms of style. When you are asking him, what about the solution to a problem? He is never answering that he has the right solution. He's taking his time, and he's always measuring the equilibrium, the balances. Among the Socialist Party, Hollande is clearly a centrist, so he is incarnating social democracy as you can have social democracy in this country, Denmark. In the French context, it means that he's supporting market economy, and also that he's supporting or has supported all the steps to deepen the EU in the past. He started working with Jacques Delors. This is something we should also not forget. He voted yes to the referendum on Maastricht in September 1992. This is something we have in common. Got a referendum on the Maastricht Treaty. You started in June. We followed in September 1992. And he also voted in favor of the European Constitutional Treaty in the referendum of 2005. So Holland's natural stance vis-à-vis the EU is not negative if you compare to other prominent members of the Socialist Party, which are clearly more skeptic vis-à-vis the deepening of the European Union than he is. It's probably the case of Laurent Fabius, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs now. But it's also the case of the more left-wing leaders, like Henri Emmanueli, for instance, if you know his name. But, as a man socialized inside the party, Hollande has always been very cautious in his discourse about Europe. He knows that the European issue, is cutting across the left-wing cleavage, okay? That the cleavage inside the Socialist Party on the issue is high. So he knows that being too explicit on Europe as a politician coming from the Socialist Party and as President of the Republic is always a big risk vis-à-vis the electorate. So in terms of party constraint, I would say, for very different reasons, but he's a bit in the same situation than Cameron in the UK. Cameron is not a convinced Eurosceptic, but he knows that Euroscepticism is very important inside the party and probably more and more important. So Cameron is very cautious about speaking on Europe. The best thing, to a certain extent, is not to speak too much, because there is always a risk to go beyond a consensus. The split of the Socialist Party on Europe is an old story. It's a very old story. It started with the creation of the party in 1971 by Mitterrand, because at this time the party was created. You have on one side, at the right, you have the left-wing Catholics, what we call in French les catholiques de gauche, or for those who know French, we say simply les cathos de gauche. And it went at this time at the left to the former Marxist and Trotskyist. Okay? And the genius of Mitterrand was to put all these people together and win be able to win the election. But the split on Europe was there right from the beginning. It probably increased when the Treaty of Maastricht in the 90s, just after the end of the Cold War, introduced more political competition in the member states. In September 1992, when we had the referendum on the ratification of the Maastricht Treaty, both camps, the right and the left, were divided. When we are looking at the survey from this time, 60% of the traditional electorate of the Socialist Party supported the ratification of the Treaty of Maastricht. So in 1992 there was a majority of, I'm not talking about the members of the party, I'm talking about the supporters of the party, voted in favor. Situation was different in May 2005. It was the opposite. 65% of the traditional socialist electorate voted against the ratification of the European Constitutional Treaty after the Socialist Party organized an internal referendum, so with the party members only, which ended with a positive result. So this was an additional element of confusion and of complication inside the Socialist Party. What are the arguments of those who are against inside the Socialist Party? Well, it's very much focused on the question of not enough social policies in Europe, Europe too much market-driven, the risk of social dumping. During the referendum campaign of 2005, we had the famous debate about, was symbolic, but about the Polish plumber. Well, the figure of this man coming in France and working illegally and making the legal work, challenging the legal work. Of course, we do not have Polish plumbers, or quite a few, but what was interesting was the symbol. This debate on the Polish plumber was introduced by a right-wing politician, Philippe de Villiers, in an article published in the Figaro, but the debate was also supported by parts of the left-wing, the left-wing part of the Socialist Party. So Socialist parties remain split on the European issue, and that explains when you take the political program during the presidential campaign, you will not see in François Hollande's program many proactive proposals on Europe. I read it again preparing this conference. It was very interesting to see how shy it was. Again, not because Hollande is not believing in further integration, but because it was a too sensitive issue when you have to be elected by a split electorate. Okay, so this is something we all know. EU commitment has also to do with national politics. And politics is winning elections. This is what we expect from a politician. If you take now the current situation, what I'm saying here is true, I think, for France, is probably true for all the EU member states. EU is less and less an isolated topic. When I say isolated topic, I mean isolated from domestic policies. It's very artificial to say, well, you have on one side European policies, and the other side you have the domestic policy. There is an interdependence between the two. And it's particularly true with domestic economic policies. And I would add, moreover, after the monetary and economic crisis of 2008. What is the situation of French economy? I mean, the basics. 10% unemployment in 2012, which is corresponding to the EU average. You are very lucky in Denmark, you're legal. Financial ranking, strong banks, I mean a stable banking system. This is something we should emphasize, even if some banks were concerned with the Greek sovereign debts, especially the Crédit Agricole, but we didn't get bankruptcy as you had, because some of your banks actually closed in this country. This is something we didn't have because the banks have an international profile and were consolidated at the end of the 90s, beginning of the years 2000, especially with this big bank, BNP Paribas, which is a big success. But the financial ranking has been downgraded. France, and that was before the election of François Hollande, lost the famous AAA+. The budget deficit is 90% of the GDP, so it's higher than what is allowed by the treaties. I think in Denmark you are around 60, so you're on what is permitted by the Maastricht criteria. After 2 years of negative growth, we have a positive growth again in 2011, and the public debt. The public deficit is now around 6%. So it's the double what is allowed, because it's 3%, and it's decreasing. It's decreasing. The idea is to go to 3%. Well, the commitment was to get 3% in 2013, but it will be probably 2014. Right. Sarkozy had to cope with this situation as the elected president during the campaign, and it was not easy for him to have this state of the economy. And this is probably why he decided in 2011 to adopt in his discourse an economic position very close from what the German Chancellor Angela Merkel said, close to what I will call the German classic economic orthodoxy, which means, well, first of all, we have to clean up our public finances, and if we clean up our public finances, then we will have growth again. He was very much supported, if you read well, papers from bankers, from big business, well, they were very convinced about this well, strategy to recover well, better economic results, because I think this community of bankers, of big business, were very impressed by the German recovery starting in 2010. And it's interesting because Sarkozy, at the beginning of his mandate, 2007, was not very fascinated by Germany. He was not fascinated by the German model because he thought Germany was too close from France to a certain extent, especially when you're looking at well, welfare state and things like that. He was much more fascinated by well, what was called the Thatcherite miracle in England, followed by the policies of Tony Blair, and he said that very openly. But he had to change his discourse, and you know that something symbolic was his support to the German proposal on a new treaty on budgetary stability. And it's Sarkozy who signed this treaty on the 2nd of March 2012, but politically speaking, because we were closed from the election, of course there was a risk. This risk was, well, President Sarkozy has no policy anymore. He's doing exactly what Chancellor Merkel wants to do, and journalists started inventing the new word Merkozy, which was very much in the debate. And I'm not sure that Chancellor Merkel really helped Sarkozy because, and it's very rare in European politics, she officially supported his second candidacy. It's very rare that a head of government is intervening so well explicitly in the politics of a neighbor country. And it's strange from Mrs. Merkel, she's a very prudent politician. She's not doing a lot of mistakes. But probably she thought that Sarkozy was the only guarantee on the question of signing the Treaty on Budgetary Stability and ratifying it. But you see the consequence for Sarkozy and the advantage for Hollande. Hollande could start as a challenger a discourse where he said, well, France has lost its co-leadership in Europe with Germany. Germany is the leader, and we just align our position to Germany. Okay? He took the opportunity, and it was very, in terms of politics, it was very smart, as to extent. He took the opportunity to exploit the Merkozy critique and start saying in the campaign that, he's not going to ratify the Treaty on Budgetary Stability under the German conditions, is interesting. He never said, and we talked about that, you will never find a statement by Sarkozy saying, I would like to renegotiate. He didn't say that. It was, well, in fact, the interpretation was renegotiation, especially by the foreign minister. But he said, we would like to add new provisions about growth, because there is a risk to follow just the track of austerity. If you have a policy only focused on austerity, then you can have also recession at the end. This discourse on both, well, the critique of austerity and the recovering of a French voice vis-à-vis Germany was François Hollande's main European message during the campaign, and it helped him developing support among his electorate, especially the left-wing electorate, and also all the French who thinks it's very important to have a French voice, because you should not forget that there is an history of universality in this country, and this country doesn't want to be in the camp of the followers. Well, this is something which is really in the history of the country. We need to have a certain leadership. But what is interesting, and this is my third part, that was discourse during the campaign, so the election was a success. But after being elected, when you see the policy that François Hollande and his government started to develop, well, it was very pragmatic, and not so far away from what the Germans and many other countries in Europe are doing. The growth question was, I must say, a bit of window dressing for domestic politics, right? Because the rest of the treaty was mainly accepted, and you could see that from the ratification in the National Assembly. Inside the Socialist Party, I'm just taking the Socialist Party, 264 votes in favor, only 20 against, 9 abstentions. Okay, and the 20 against are, well, the representative of the left-wing part of the party. Mostly young people. This is very interesting, because again, if I'm doing a comparison with the Conservative Party in UK, the most Eurosceptic MPs are young MPs. You know, so I would say the same for the most Eurosceptic members of the Socialist Party, but that's a small minority. Treaty on budgetary stability, you know that one commitment was introducing in a budgetary law, or even in your constitution, you have the choice, the so-called golden rule. So, and I know that you have a debate in Denmark about this budgetary law. I'm not sure that it has been voted by the forfeiting yet. It's in the process. Well, it was voted in France, not in the constitution, but in what we call an organic law. And as a consequence, the reform of the public financing started. Hollande chose a prime minister who is also coming from, well, I would say, the social democratic tradition, the center-left, Jean-Marc Ayrault. He took a ministry for finance and economics, Pierre Moscovici, who is exactly on the same line. And what does it mean, reform of public finances? First, reduce the expenses. No replacement of the civil servants who are retiring. And here, I must say that there is a French exception, because the French public spending represents 57% of the GDP, so it's 5 points above, above Sweden. 5 points above Sweden. 10 points above Germany. If you compare, I'm not against civil servants, I'm saying that for the French diplomats over here. I like the civil servants. But you have in France 90 civil servants for every 100,000 inhabitants. You have 15 German. So it's 40% less. So clearly reduction of expenses, but, and this is very different from what Sarkozy did, there was another part of the reform, which were also done by Angela Merkel when she arrived, increase of the taxes. Increase of the taxes. With a risk, of course, because when you decrease the expenditures and the public expenditures, then you create dissatisfaction at the left of the political spectrum. People very attached to the welfare states and very attached to what is called in France les services publics, and difficult to translate into other languages. It's not public utilities, it's something else. And when you increase the taxes, well, then you have then a risk of dissatisfaction among the middle class, and especially the small middle class who voted for you, because in average, the increase of the taxes on the direct revenue was 7%. Okay. But vis-à-vis Germany, you remember the discourse on differentiation during the campaign. Well, in practice, it looks very orthodox, no? According to the German standards. Maybe the efforts to reduce the public deficit is more important than what Sarkozy and the liberal government tried to do. And I think German Chancellor Merkel understood that very, very quickly. If you are doing interviews with German officials, well, they know that France, in fact, is not contesting the German standards. The only question is France going to win the economic reform? This is something else. But there is, I think, a conviction in Berlin that the French did, well, the only choice which was possible. This is the way the German probably presenting the situation. And the relationships between Merkel and Hollande is not bad at all. In terms of style, is probably somebody who has more in common with Madame Merkel, Mrs. Merkel, than his predecessor. Personal relationships between Sarkozy and Hollande is sometimes a bit difficult. The Prime Minister is also somebody who can have a good political capital in Germany because he's fluent in German. He's a former professor of German language. He did a trip to Germany recently, and the echoes in the German press were very positive because he was able to answer questions directly in German, etc., which is rare and rare now because you have less and less French politicians able to speak in German. Now, because formerly German was for a certain number of elites was the first language learned at school, but of course it has no change. Well, with the German, there is the other issue, which is the reform of the European economic governance and reform of the EMI. And here I must say that what Ulla said in his introduction is very right. You say we have sometimes the impression from Denmark that France is a southern country, the north or northern part of the south. Well, it's true that France, in terms of political strategy, is somewhere in between. What does it mean? It means France is defending the south for financial transfers. I mean, the idea that we have to help the countries which are not in a very good shape, like Greece, like Portugal, like Spain, is something which is accepted by most of the French politicians. Very different from Germany, very different. And among the society, you have no debates as you had in Germany or as you had in the German press, famous articles in the Bild Zeitung, why are we paying for the Greeks and things like that. This is something which does not exist. So, and the French invented a word they said, well, we need une intégration solidaire. Intégration solidaire. So when you are looking to that, well, you give the impression that in defending the South, the French tried to took a bit the lead of the South. But if you take the structure of the economy, if you take the banking system, France is a northern country, and probably does not want to leave to Germany alone the northern leadership. Even if Germany, of course, has better economic results, but you should not forget that some of the economic standards of France are not bad at all, especially the adaptation of big business to globalization. When you take these big companies of what we call the CAC 40, well, they're the models of adaptation to economic globalization. And this is something the Brits have always problem to understand. This is a French paradox there, if you're interested a good comment on this paradox, read the last edition of The Economist. Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, if you take the question of the banking union, and I know that this is an issue which is also very important for the Danes. Again, in terms of substance, the French are very close from the German, even in the wish to make an enhanced cooperation if the Brits block. You know, there's a possibility in the treaty, if a country is blocking a decision, you can leave him and do a cooperation with a limited number of countries. We have some examples for patent law, for divorce also. So in this area of banking union, well, the positions are quite close. Budgets, well, I think the idea not to increase the budget is something which is also shared. I know you have a debate in this country about the rebate. It's an important issue. The Swedes got a rebate, so you have to get one as well. If you take France, well, there is an issue about the British rebate. Because the British rebate is a permanent rebate, which was negotiated by Mrs. Thatcher in 1984 in Fontainebleau. It's the city where I'm living. Very close to my home. Here there is an issue. Do we have to continue with this permanent system of rebate? And the other issue, and this is not particularly well striking, is common agricultural policy. Because the French farmers, well, get very good, well, returns from the EU budget. On this question, the French are very close from Poland, probably. If you take the other issue in terms of spending, which is cohesion policy, well, it's not so important. Probably the French are not very far from the Danish position, which means, well, focusing more on the poorest region, the intervention of the structural fund. So, what are the differences then with the Germans? There is one. There is one. The French are not prepared in the short term to have a new reform of the treaties, of the institutions, to, well, complete the reform of the economic governance. They want to focus on the substance, but they do not want to have new institutional reforms, especially reforms giving more power control to EU institutions. I mean, the EU Commission and the European Court of Justice. And this is a difference with Germany. The plans on what the Germans call politische Union, etc., well, are not particularly popular in France. Well, the French minister at the end participated to the Westerland group in his personal capacity, but he was not particularly, it's not a secret, he was not particularly fan of it. And it's a bit a structural problem. It's an old story because we had it during the Maastricht negotiation. We had it also in 1994 when the Germans proposed what was called at this time the Schäuble-Lammers project, trying to have a more institutionalized and federal union around the members of the, or further future member of the Economic and Monetary Union. The French said no. And this is a paradox of what the French call sometimes l'Europe puissance, which is absolutely impossible to translate into other languages. On one side, they want to have more European reforms, more European policy, but they are not prepared to assume institutional consequences. This is because institutional consequences means, debates about sovereignty, etc. But this is something a Dane can understand very easily, because it's exactly the same in your country. You have probably a lot of in common with the German standards on, the good economy, but you are not prepared to reform institutions. You think that your Prime Minister would like to have a referendum on reforming the institutions? I'm not sure. A bit the same in England. So this is what we have in common, the Danes and the French. Another difference between the French and the Germans. The French want to give more, political stance to the members of the Eurozone, so the EU 17. Okay? And that creates a problem, of course, with the rest, and those who are not participating to the euro, like Denmark. I think the Germans are more sensitive to the ideas that we should not create too much cleavage between the 27 and the 17. And I have an explanation why the French are probably taking this this way, and it was reaffirmed at the beginning of the week. I read an interview of the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Laurent Fabius, in the Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. It was quite clear, it was interesting. This is because, there is a strong identity of being a founding father of Europe. And it's still there. And always this fear that if you enlarge too much, then you are going to lose the political capacity, say. And when you have the possibility to support something which is smaller inside, big, then you do not hesitate to do that. But this is a difference with Germany, probably. So let's wait now the question of the reform of the institutions, because the population is not at all interested in the reform of the EU treaties. The population is focused on the question of employment, but this is the case of many populations inside the EU. And this is why the Prime Minister asked Louis Gallois, who is somebody coming from the high civil service, but who was also the chair of EADS, to write this report on the competitiveness. And what does it say? Well, I have read it recently. Well, things which are said for years now. We need to have more small and medium-sized enterprises. So again, you see here the comparison with the German case. More innovation and research. An increased industrial ratio in the total added value of the country, and more flexibility in the job market. Here we're looking at Denmark, because we know about your flexibility in the job market. And the question, of course, is France able to do the reforms? That's the question, and that's exactly the issue of The Economist, which has a very provocative title, because the title is "The Time Bomb at the Heart of Europe." that's the cover page of the Economist. Yes, again. It depends what you take into consideration. It's true that the taxes, corporate taxes especially, are high and not particularly attractive for business. It's true that social law is too rigid. But if you take individual productivity, it's one of the highest in Europe, individual productivity. And that explains the attractiveness of foreign investment. It's the fourth country for foreign investment in the world. You see the paradox. It's very interesting. And what I also already said, the adaptation of big business to globalization is a real success. L'Oréal, Total, all these big companies. So it's difficult sometimes to understand this country. If there is a French exceptionalism today, it's in cognitive terms. Like there is a French exceptionalism. What about the society? And I'm not going to be too long, because I see you start. You didn't write any paper at the moment, but it will happen.
Because it's democratic.
Yes. Yes. Well, society, I think, what is very important is probably doing policies in terms of employment going to the young people. Because one problem of the absence of flexibility of the job market is, well, the capacity of the young people to enter the job market. But this is something you have in Italy in the same way. The demographic trends are very good, and this is a difference with Germany. The French are doing children. Well, the explanation, done by the demographs is, is not anymore in terms of values, etc. It's linked to family policies. You have a very good system of schools for small children start at 3 years old, what we call les écoles maternelles, and the women are on the job market. So, but it has to do with values. Something interesting, if you compare to Germany, for instance. In Germany, well, the society is still expecting from a woman who have young children to take care of the children at home. Well, in France, it's not the case. You can have young children and be on the job market without feeling too much guilty. I mean, vis-à-vis the society. So this is something I think which is very, very important. of course, if the economy is going better, I think it will have also an impact on the support to Europe, because here we have in France a phenomenon which is well, a common phenomenon. We can see that the real cleavage vis-à-vis Europe, I mean the support, is more and more a social cleavage, more than a political cleavage, I mean, expressed in terms of right and left. So the more educated you are, the more socially secured you are inside a society, the more prepared you are to support Europe. This is still true. You can see that in the survey. So if you are an urban professor in Paris, you have more chance, I mean, statistically, to support Europe if you are a blue-collar worker in Marseille. And this question of the blue-collar workers is becoming a real issue, not only for Europe but for the whole Western world. It's interesting because those are the people who are really voting for the far right parties now. Fear of Europe, fear of globalization, fear of migration, fear of multiculturalism, etc., etc. And I'm saying Western world because, to a certain extent, it was a problem for the Republicans in terms of electorate in the United States. Just to finish, when you take the French, well, way of thinking the EU, of course, it never limits itself to economics, but it had also another dimension, which is participating as a political actor to foreign policy, to defense policy. You know that Sarkozy's decision in 2009 was to reintegrate NATO. I mean, well, not NATO because we never left NATO, but the organized army inside NATO, left by de Gaulle in 1966. The socialists contested this position in 2009, saying that it was a way to lose the autonomy vis-à-vis the United States. And it's interesting, I just got the report written by Hubert Védrine, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and sent to the President of the Republic, and well, it confirms what we knew and what we expected the experts. France is not going to renegotiate its position in NATO. Hollande is going to stay in NATO. It says also something on the current relationship to the United States, because well, it's going like this in history, and it's conflict of universalism, you know, between France and but for the moment, I would say Obama is very popular. It was quite fun to see the surveys organized during the American election. 90% of the French would like to vote for Obama. 90%. But it was the case in Western Europe. It was a bit different in Poland, and slightly different in Russia. If you are interested in that, you can see online the transatlantic trends, the surveys done every year by the German Marshall Fund. It's It's available online. So the idea is to influence NATO from inside with the other Europeans and trying to sync in terms of complementarity the European defense policy and the NATO commitments. But here there is a problem. There is a problem. Several problems. First of all, problem with partners. Germans are still shy on this question of defense. Okay, probably linked to the history of Germany. The Brits, well, they are open to pragmatic cooperation in industry, for material, etc. When you are talking about a defense policy in Europe with an operational headquarter, well, they are against. Okay? So a problem of support. In France, there is also a problem with what the militaries, the officers call, and I like it, l'esprit de défense. So this idea that we need to keep a high budget for defense policy because it's important to be able to intervene in the world, etc., etc. This is something which is decreasing in the society, but it's not a French specificity. It's the same everywhere in Europe. The budget is still representing, for defense, 1.9% of the gross domestic product, but it's decreasing, and it's not by chance that President Hollande decided to ask back the soldiers which are in Afghanistan a year before the other Western partners. Another issue, and France is always, can I say that, we always expect from something from France, is Mediterranean policy. Well, yes, it's true that there is inside the European Union this idea that we have to support relations with the southern bank of the Mediterranean Sea, also to balance what is done in Eastern Europe. But it's a bit complicated because something which has been understood by the politicians and by the diplomats, probably by the diplomats before the politicians, it's as usual, it's usual, is that you should not develop a neo-colonial reflex in intervening too much in the countries, who had a revolution. This intervention or interventionist method was very much the case before, when you had the autocrats there. Probably this is not possible and not acceptable anymore. So you have to, and this is here that Europe is very important for France, because if you go with Europe, with other Europeans, you cannot be accused of doing neo-colonialism and things like this. Another issue, if you know Turkish diplomacy, when François Hollande was elected, there was a lot of expectation in Ankara for a change in the negotiation for membership. Well, what is the situation? The situation with Turkey is probably better, because I've never understood why. He was very against Sarkozy EU membership. EU membership of Turkey. Now France is supporting the agreement on the visa, but have seen any statement from François Hollande for opening new chapters in negotiations. So this is something which remains a bit implicit for the moment. So at the very end, I would like to conclude by a couple of points. My first point, you see, one point, but it was one point with several sub-points. So my point is, if you have to, we'll take 2 minutes. If you have to qualify the current situation of this country, and here the economist is right, it's a country which is for the moment more inward-looking due to the question of the crisis. Okay? It's a country which wants to solve the problem of the economic crisis, do better. And that's explaining why you didn't have big figures that you had in the 80s, the political class like Delors, Giscard doing, well, discourse on Europe, etc. Because this is not the problem of the political class for the moment. Second, with Germany there is still a group.
Is that a sub-point?
Yes, but that would be very big. With Germany, still, well, you have still a privileged system of conflict management. Okay. When a problem occurs between the two countries, you have the capacity to solve this problem through compromise. But it's more unbalanced in terms of leadership than it was in the past. And it does not mean that, as a consequence, that you have a strong anti-Germanism in the society. It's not the case. Anti-Germanism is very weak. We can see that from all the surveys. Social privileges are important if you take the support vis-à-vis Europe. Probably more important now than the left-wing cleavage. And if you take the political cleavage, it's more inside the parties than between the two camps that you have the differences. And I think for the future, the question is to solve the economic challenges and then to become more proactive. But no choice, because this is also a revelation for France. If you want to be more proactive and if you want to have leadership, now, you have to be good in economy and you have to be good in soft power, okay? Because you have less and less interest now among the societies for hard powers, in Europe. You know what I mean? And you cannot just limit your strategy to say, well, we're good in defense, we're good in security, but economy is for the others. So you see, it's a fantastic contradiction of a very old French statement that there is a primacy of politics on economy. It's a country, or we have the impression that it's a country which is now coming at the agenda. Thank you. Sorry.